Chapter 19 of The Duke of Chimney Butte. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Duke of Chimney Butte by G.W. Ogden. Chapter 19. The Sentinel. There appeared in the light of the hotel door for a moment the figures of struggling men, followed by the sound of feet in flight down the steps and somebody mounting a horse in haste at the hotel hitching rack. Whoever this was rode away at a hard gallop. Lambert knew the battle was over, and as he came to the hitching rack he saw that Taterleg's horse was still there. So he had not fled. Several voices sounded from the porch in excited talk, among them Taterleg's, proving that he was sound and untouched. His uneasiness gone, Lambert stood a little while in front, well out in the dark, trying to pick up what was being said, but with little result, for people were arriving with noise of heavy boots to learn the cause of the disturbance. Taterleg held the floor for a little while, his voice severe, as if he laid down the law. Alta replied in what appeared to be indignant protest, then fell to crying. There was a picture of her in the door, a moment being led inside by her mother, blubbering into her hands. The door slammed after them, and Taterleg was heard to say in loud, firm voice, "Don't approach me, I tell you. I'd hit a blind woman as quick as I would a one-armed man." Lambert felt that this was the place to interfere. He called Taterleg. "All right, Duke, I'm coming," Taterleg answered. The door opened, revealing the one-armed proprietor entering the house, revealing a group of men and women, bareheaded, as they had rushed to the hotel at the sound of the shooting, revealing Taterleg coming down the steps, his box of chewing gum under his arm. Wood fastened the door back in its accustomed anchorage. His neighbors closed round where he stood, explaining the affair, his stump of arm lifting and pointing in the expressionless gestures common to a man thus maimed. "Are you hurt?" Lambert inquired. "No, I ain't hurt none, Duke." Taterleg got aboard of his horse, with nothing more asked of him or volunteered on his part. They had not proceeded far when his indignation broke bounds. "I ain't hurt, but I'm swing like a fool miller moth in a lamp chimney," he complained. "Who was that shooting around so darn careless?" "Jedlick, darn him. It's a wonder he didn't kill somebody upstairs somewhere. First shot he hit a box of tobacco back of Wood's counter. I don't know what he hit the second time, but it wasn't me. He hit the side of the store." Taterleg rode along in silence a little way. "Well, that was pretty good for him," he said. "Who was that hopped a horse like he was going for a doctor and tore off?" "Jedlick, darn him." Lambert allowed the matter to rest at that. Knowing that neither of them had been hurt, Taterleg would come to telling it before long, not being built so that he could hold a piece of news like that without suffering great discomfort. "I'm through with that bunch down there," he said in the tone of deep, disgustful renunciation. "I never would let on and soak that way before in my life. No, I ain't hurt, Duke, but it ain't no fault of that girl, I ain't. She done all she could to kill me off." "Who started it?" "Well, I'll give it to you straight, Duke, from the first word, and you can judge for yourself what kind of a woman that girl's going to turn out to be. I never would have believed she'd have throwed a man that way. But you can't read 'em, Duke. No man can read 'em." "I guess that's right," Lambert allowed, wondering how far he had read in a certain dark eyes which seemed as innocent as a child's. "It's past the power of any man to do it. Well, you know, I went over there with my fresh box of gum, all the fruit flavors you can name, and me and her, we sat on the porch gabbing and sampling the gum. She's never was so leanin' and lovin' before, sittin' up so close to me you couldn't put a sheet of writing paper between us. Shucks. Rubbing the paint off, Taterleg. You ought to took the tip that she was about done with you." "You're right. If I'd had of as much brains as an ant. Well, she told me Jedlick was layin' for me and begged me not to hurt him, for she didn't want to see me go to jail on account of a feller like him. She talked to me like a Dutch uncle, and put her head so close I could feel them bangs a tickle my ear. But that's done with. She can tickle all the ears she wants to tickle, but she'll never tickle mine no more. And all the time she was talking to me like that, where do you reckon that Jedlick feller was?" "In the saloon, I guess, firing up." "No, he wasn't, Duke. He was sittin' right in that hotel, with his old flat feet under the table."
shovelin' in pie. He came out picking his teeth pretty soon, standing there by the door, dern him, like he owned the dump. Well, he may, for all I know. Alta, she inched away from me, and says to him, "Mr. Jedlick, come over here and shake hands with Mr. Wilson." "Yes," he says, "I'll shake insect powder in on his grave." "I see you doing it," I says, "you long, hungry, and half full. If you ever make a pass at me, you'll swaller wind so fast you'll bust." Well, he begun to shuffle and prance and cut up like a boy making faces, and that's where Alta, she ducked in through the parlor window. "Don't hurt him, Mr. Jedlick," she said. "Please don't hurt him." "I'll chew him up as fine as cat hair and blow him out through my teeth," Jedlick told her. And there's where I started after that fella. He was standing in front of the door all the time, where he could duck inside if he saw me a-comin'. And guess he would have ducked if Wood hadn't been there. When he saw Wood, old Jedlick pulled his gun. I slung down on him time enough to blow him in two, and pulled on my trigger, not aiming to hurt the old schooner, only to snap a bullet between his toes, but she wouldn't work. Old Jedlick, he was so rattled at the sight of that gun in my hand, he banged loose, slapped through that window into the box of plug back in the counter. I pulled on her and pulled on her, but she wouldn't snap, and I was yanking on the hammer to cock her when he tore loose with that second shot. That's when I found out what the matter was with that old gun of mine.
Taterleg was so moved at this passage that he seemed to run out of words. He rode along in silence until they reached the top of the hill, and the house on the mesa stood before them, dark and lonesome. Then he pulled out his gun and handed it across to the Duke.
"Run your thumb over the hammer of that gun, Duke," he said.
"Well, what in the world? It feels like chewing gum, Taterleg."
"It is chewing gum, Duke, a wad of it as big as my fist gluing down the hammer of that gun. That girl put it there, Duke. She knew Jedlick wouldn't have no more show before me man to man than a rabbit. She done me that trick, Duke. She wanted to kill me off."
"There wasn't no joke about that, old feller," the Duke said seriously, grateful that the girl's trick had not resulted in any greater damage to his friend than the shock to his dignity and simple heart.
"Yes, and it was my own gum. That's the worst part of it, Duke. She wasn't even using his gum. Dang her melts.
She must have favored Jedlick pretty strong to go that far."
"Well, if she wants him after what she saw of him, she can take him. I clinched him before he could waste any more ammunition, and twisted his gun away from him. I jolted him a couple of jolts with my fist, and he broke and run. You seen him hop his horse."
"What did you do with his gun?"
"I walked over the window where that girl was looking out to see Jedlick wipe up the porch with me, and handed her the gun, and I says, 'Give this to Mr. Jedlick, with my regards,' I says, 'and tell him if he wants any more to send me word.' Well, she come out, and I called her on what she'd done to my gun. She swore she didn't mean it for nothing but a joke. I said if that was her idea of a joke, the quicker we parted the sooner. She began to bawl, and the old man and old woman put in, and I'd have slapped that feller, Duke, if he'd had two arms on him, but you can't slap a half a man."
"I guess that's right."
I walked up to that girl, and I says, "You've chawed the last wad of my gum you'll ever plaster up agin your old lean jawbone. You may be some figure in Glendora," I says, "but anywheres else you wouldn't cut no more ice than a cracker." Wood, he took it up again, and that's when I come away.
"Looks like it's all off between you and Alta now."
"Broke off? Shot up to the handle? Serves a feller right for being a fool. I might have knowed when she wanted me to shave my mustache off she didn't have no more heart in her than a fish."
That was asking a lot of a man, sure as the world.
"No man can look two ways at once without somebody putting something down his back, Duke."
"Referring to the lady in Wyoming, sure?"
"She was white. She says, 'Mr. Wilson, I'll always think of you as a gentleman.' Them was her last words, Duke."
They were walking their horses past the house, which was dark, careful not to wake Vesta. But their care went for nothing. She was not in bed. Around the turn of the long porch they saw her standing in the moonlight, looking across the river into the lonely night. It seemed as if she stood in communion with distant places, to which she sent her longing out of a bondage that she could not flee.
"She looks lonesome," Taterleg said. "Well, I ain't a-goin' to go and pet and console her. I'm done taking chances."
Lambert understood as never before how melancholy that life must be for her. She turned as they passed, her face clear in the bright moonlight. Taterleg swept off his hat with the grand air that took him so far with the ladies, Lambert saluting with less extravagance. Vesta waved her hand in acknowledgment, turning again to her watching over the vast empty land, as if she waited the coming of somebody who would quicken her life with the cheer that it wanted so sadly that calm summer night. Lambert felt an unusual restlessness that night. No mood over him for his bed. It seemed, in truth, that a man would be wasting valuable hours of life by locking his sense up in sleep. He put his horse away, sated with the comedy of Taterleg's adventure, and not caring to pursue it further, to get away from the discussion of it that he knew Taterleg would keep going as long as there was an ear open to hear him. He walked to the nearby hilltop to view the land under this translating spell. This was the hilltop from which he had ridden down to interfere between Vesta and Nick Hargus. With that adventure he had opened his account of trouble in the Badlands, an account that was growing day by day, the final balancing of which he could not foresee. From where he stood the house was dark and lonely as an abandoned habitation. It seemed, indeed, that bright and full of youthful light as Vesta Philbrook was, she was only one warm candle in the gloom of this great and melancholy monument of her father's misspent hopes. Before she could warm it into life and cheerfulness, it would encroach upon her with its chilling gloom, like an insidious cold drift of sand, smothering her beauty, burying her quick heart away from the world for which it longed for evermore. It would need the noise of little feet across those broad, empty, lonesome porches to wake the old house, the shouting and laughter and gleam of merry eyes that childhood brings into the world's gloom, to drive away the shadows that draped it like a mist. Perhaps Vesta stood there tonight, sending her soul out in a call to someone for whom she longed these comfortable, natural, womanly hopes in her own good heart. He sighed, wishing her well of such hope, if she had it, and forgot her in a moment as his eyes picked up a light far across the hills. Now it twinkled brightly, now it wavered and died, as if its beam was all too weak to hold the continued effort of projecting itself so far. That must be the Kerr ranch. No other habitation lay in that direction. Perhaps in the light of that lamp somebody was sitting, bending a dark head in pensive tenderness with the thought of him. He stood with his pleasant fancy, his dream around him like a cloak. All the trouble that was in the world for him that hour was near the earth, like the precipitation of settling waters. Over it he gazed, superior to its ugly murk, careless of whether it might rise to befoul the clear current of his hopes or sink and settle to obscure his dreams no more. There was a sound of falling shale on the slope, following the disturbance of a quick foot. Vesta was coming, unseen and unheard through the insulation of his thoughts. She had approached within 10 rods of him before he saw her, the moonlight on her fair face glorious in her uncovered hair. End of chapter 19.